Hello and welcome to the Craft Beer Corner. For today's beer review, we're jumping into a beer from Copper Kettle Brewing Company out of Denver, Colorado. It's certainly been a while since we've done one of their beers, and I saw this one pop up in my Tavour options and sounded awesome, so I had to grab it. This is one of their barrel-aged limited release beers. Indeed, it tells you right on the can they only produced 180 cases. So definitely quite lucky that Tavour got some of the 180 cases that they produced and that I was able to get on it very quickly. Not a lot of these to go around. So this specific beer is called Sobremesa. It is a pale strong ale clocking in its 8.3% ABV. This one has been tequila barrel aged and also has added agave and lime. So before we get into the beer, Sobremesa, what does that mean? That literally translates roughly in English to upon the table. And it is a Spanish kind of tradition of relaxing at the table for a short while after eating a very heavy meal. So kind of gets you in the mood. This, I'm guessing, is going to have some vibes akin to a margarita, but sounds awesome. And yes, strong ales can be light or dark or caramel colored, everything in between. So they call this, specifically the way they categorize it, is a pale strong ale or a strong pale ale. However you wish to term it, you know, it's going to be a pale ale, but higher ABV, 8.3, significantly higher. So this one sounds awesome. As per usual, they have pretty clean label art, but they do have kind of, cowboy looking, playing a guitar with a lady resting against his back, drinking a beer while he's strumming away. So very, very cool. Let's get this one cracked. Nice big can here. There is no shot. We will get this entire thing in our glass, even though this is a pretty good sizable glass here. So, whoops. Get this poured gently at first, and then we'll give a little agitation, give it a chance to form a head. We don't want to go crazy here. I think it's going to do just fine. Yeah, this one looks like it's doing just fine. So we'll keep it nice and slow and steady there to finish it off. All right, did not get the whole can in. Yep, as expected, this is a little bit darker than your standard pale ale, but again, it's got a higher ABV. So it's kind of a true golden yellow color. It looks lovely in the glass, but definitely a bit darker than you normally see on a pale ale. Quite active in terms of carbonation. This one mostly has kind of medium-sized bubbles shooting up, so I'm not sure how long that head's going to stick around, though it is worth noting it did form very creamy, tight, compact head there. So maybe we'll get more mileage out of it than it looks from the carbonation rushing off. Other thing I can say, very pronounced aroma. You could smell it as soon as you started pouring it. So we're going to get right up on it and see exactly what we get in this one. Oh, wow, yeah. That smells really nice. So it smells distinctly of tequila and lime. It's almost like, you're in college and you're lining up tequila shooters and the salt off the thumb and the lime behind it, however you take your tequila, but it smells very nice. It puts me in the mood of like margarita in beer form. But it's also worth noting that, this is a coarse beer, and there is actually quite a pronounced malt bill aroma coming off of this as well. On this one, it smells quite doughy, very dough, very bread-like. It smells really, really nice, which is a nice contrast to the big aromas of tequila and lime, in my opinion. Altogether, it looks beautiful. It smells fantastic. Head settled down a little bit, but it's got a really nice creamy pad floating there and good cling. So let's just jump right in, see what this one's about. Ooh, that's a big beer. Wow, that is bold flavor. You know, I should have expected it, but I didn't expect it to be quite that intense. That's really, really nice. Really, really nice. So, we'll talk texture and weight in a minute, but I want to talk about these flavors while they're immediately fresh on my brain from my palate. So the first thing you get when you swallow is a very big kick of tequila. It's very pronounced. The tequila really speaks to you. And immediately behind it a big kick of that lime. It's got a little bit of that limey sharpness, that tartness that you would expect to come along with a lime, and it pairs very well with that big punch of tequila flavor. The agave in here is a little more subtle, but it's nice. In terms of where the beer qualities itself come through, what I was really getting on the nose in terms of this malt bill is absolutely translating into this glass. It's got a very nice grainy, kind of baked good quality to it, like fresh baked bread. That's kind of the flavor profiles that are popping out of this. It does taste very grainy, very, very bread-like. And it's a really nice contrast to that sharpness of the tequila and the lime, which together alone is delicious. But then when everything starts to work together and that malt bill comes through and plays its part, it's absolutely beautiful. So this is a beer of big, stark contrasts. We've got one end of this heavy kind of booze-laden side and that lime that really binds, and then this completely opposite end that's coming strictly from the base beer itself. How does this compare to a standard strong ale or a standard pale ale? It's definitely different. Your average strong ale is typically going to be darker, and it's going to have a lot more roasty and caramel-like overtones. And even though this is darker than your normal pale ale, and indeed it's got this true golden yellow hue to it, the profile that's coming out of the malt bill on this is indeed very grain-like, very doughy, very bready, which is pretty common on a pale ale. You don't always get that. The other thing that's worth noting on this one is it does have a decent bit of bitters. On this, the bitters remind me most of, say, kind of taking a heavy hand with a classic British Fuggle or something of that nature. That's just got these kind of nice earthy hop notes to it, nothing funky. It's not one of these new varieties with all these citrus and berries and tropical fruit overtones, nothing like that. This is very much a classic kind of hop profile where you're getting these really nice earthy bitters. And that, for my money, whatever hop they did actually use, is a great choice and an excellent selection in this beer. It pairs extremely well with that doughy, with that bready quality, and also with the lime and the agave that they put in here. It's absolutely delicious. This is a very well-balanced beer. So, body and mouthfeel, I did get at first, but then I was really paying such acute attention to kind of the flavor profile and how it blends here, I'm going to have to jump back in anyway. So I will pay attention to the body and the mouthfeel again. I'll pick apart, see what happens flavor-wise as this re-intensifies. Then we'll talk about the finish. But I can tell you, it's absolutely delicious and very refreshing. That's so good. Big, bold flavors. So the body and the mouthfeel on this one. Mouthfeel, it's got a good bit of resistance. It doesn't feel syrupy, but you can definitely feel the resistance, which feels appropriate for 8.3%. Body, same thing. I would say it's on the border of medium, medium heavy, which for an 8.3% ABV feels right. Feels exactly right. Weight-wise and texture-wise, it's extremely nice. It's exactly what I expected. I would say they nailed it for getting in, the right area for this beer style and this ABV range. In terms of the flavors on second sip, it is indeed, again, just re-intensification. That nice big burst of tequila and lime up front, and then after about a second, the malt bill really starts to kind of bloom up with that same intensity, and you get all these underlying baked good, bread, dough-like qualities. It's absolutely delicious together. And the balance that they have between the beer and the additives is just top-notch. I mean, that is how to balance something like this with these big and bold and in-your-face of flavors. It is just perfectly balanced. Copper Kettle has done it again for my money. In terms of the finish, pale ales depends on the pale ale, depends on the intensity of the bitters, how many hops, typically are going to get their finish extended based on the hop intensity. On this one, that is not really what's driving the finish. It's the intensity of that tequila and that lime in particular, and also that underlying malt bill, which in something of a pale quality where there's not a lot of roasty notes, where there's naturally bitters coming up out from the roast, That's not as common, but it's happening here. So this is definitely a longer than average finish, to be certain. And it is really quite balanced between still tasting lingering tequila, lime, and that very bread-like malt bill. It's absolutely delicious. This is a big, bold, refreshing beer that is just beautifully put together. I absolutely love this. I expected this would be good because I've had enough beers from Copper Kettle and it sounded great, but this is even better than I anticipated. I am a big, big fan of this one. I'm going to take my time, sip on this, come up with my scores. When we come back, we will get this beer ranked from top to bottom. All right, you know the drill by now. We've gotten to enjoy this beer. We're going to get it ranked. This was Copper Kettle Brewing Company's Sobremesa, a strong pale ale that was tequila barrel aged, had added agave and lime. This one clocked in at 8.3%, and Copper Kettle is based in Denver, Colorado. So starting with the aroma. The aroma on this was extremely pronounced. Far, far, far more pronounced aroma than you normally find on a pale ale, but that's to be expected. It was tequila barrel aged. They added agave and lime, and you could really pick up that tequila and the lime aroma and just an absolutely amazing maltiness from it. Very dough-like, very bready, baked good. Absolutely incredible aroma, very pronounced. Aroma gets a perfect 10 out of 10. For the taste, I loved this beer. It really took me by surprise. It was very intense, very bold, pungent, in-your-face flavor. Started with the tequila, immediately went to the sharpness of that lime, that nice acidic, tangy bite, and then opened up after a second or two into this equally blooming in intensity malt bill. And just as you got on the nose, it was very bready, very dough-like, very grainy, just absolutely delicious. And that gave a nice balance of flavor profile between the bold in-your-face barrel and lime and then the malt-centric side. So it really bounced out kind of this big, kind of boozy, acidic side with this earthy, more subdued grain side. And it had a nice bit of bitters to boot. Very classic earthy taste. Does get a 10 out of 10. For the body, this had a bordering medium heavy body. Right exactly where I'd expect on this style in this ABV range. Body does get a 10 out of 10. The mouthfeel on this one had a boatload of resistance. This was a very resistant mouthfeel. It didn't feel syrupy. It wasn't what I would term viscous, but you could feel the thickness of the beer. It really matched equally to that weight of the body. The mouthfeel also gets a 10 out of 10. For the finish, this was definitely above average for the style. This really did come down to a combination of factors, and surprisingly in this, the malt bill played a big factor in the length of the finish. You don't normally find this in a pale ale, nor many beer styles in that, for that matter. They don't have a lot of roasty, intense malts that draw out natural bitters. This one really drove it out from the tequila, the lime, and this underlying doughy, bready quality from the grain bill. Absolutely tremendous, well above average finish, gets a 7 out of 10. For the head and retention, this one formed a really nice, thick, creamy head, stuck around nearly the whole time. It only missed perfection by a hair. Head and retention gets a 9 out of 10. For the appearance, this was definitely darker than your average pale ale, but it was a true deep golden yellow color. And for this much higher than average ABV, it's exactly what I expected to see in the glass. The appearance does get a 10 out of 10. For the balance, this was the key to this beer for me. It was a beer that was borderline dichotomous in nature, but in the best possible way. On one hand, you have this pungency of this booze-backed tequila barrel and that added agave, that lime, that sharpness, that in-your-face nature, and then you have this underlying earthy and sumptuous nature of this malt bill. That's the best way I know to describe it. It was just huge. It was very grainy. It was very doughy. And it really helped to balance out the astringency of that in-your-face tequila and lime. The balance on this, I could not have done it better myself. It does get a 10 out of 10. Feeling in the intangible, subjectively, I loved this beer. It was bold. It was refreshing. It was a very well put together, strong pale ale. I loved it. 10 out of 10. Finally, as an example of the style, this is about as good as it gets. A big barrel aged with the right additives that work together in harmony, and everything in it was balanced. Balanced. We talk about this all the time. It is so key to what makes a great beer great. If your beer is not balanced, it's never going to be upper echelon. That's just the way that it is. And Copper Kettle, I know this about them. They clearly have great head brewers there that are acutely in tune to the detail of what it is they're trying to brew and how it all works together. This was another great example of that fact. This example of this style does get a perfect 10 out of 10, which brings the total score on Copper Kettle Brewing Company's Sobremesa to a 96 out of 100. Well above average. This is a top tier beer, guys. If you like pale ales in general or barrel aged beers in general, and you've never had kind of a strong pale ale, think hybrid pale ale, strong ale. That's exactly what it sounds like. And then the tequila, the lime, the agave, and just perfectly balanced. Tons of malts to boost that ABV up and balance out the additives. This was just so well crafted. I can't emphasize that enough. The balance on this beer was absolutely top tier, and it showed. Everything about this beer was tremendous. It far exceeded my expectations, and I thought it sounded amazing. Absolutely top tier beer, guys. I would recommend this to anybody. Folks, that is today's review. As always, I do sincerely appreciate you tuning in today. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to stay in the loop when our videos go live, just turn on your notifications, hit that bell icon. It is right next to the subscribe button. Until next time, keep it beer, keep it craft. We'll see you on the next one. Cheers.